I'm Cameron Hamilton, and you're listening to Men of the Hour podcast. I'm here with Justin talking about literally everything we're talking about: relationships, love, artificial intelligence, getting things done, and our new book, Leap of Faith. So keep listening.
Buddy, it's good to see you. You just launched a book. And
I did.
We're going to get into
Faith.
all of it. Leap of faith, dude. That's what your life consists of now after you get off a show like Love is Blind. You know?
I'm telling you. It's all leaps of faith, really. There's some bigger than others.
Yeah, dude, I got you for the next hour. We got a lot to get into, but the first question, I think a lot of people want to know this about you too, coming off that show, but is love blind from your experience?
I think it's safe to say that love is blind. Absolutely. I mean, Lauren and I fell in love sight unseen, as everyone saw. And, you know, there was really that moment where I was standing behind that plexiglass, like, you know, what if we're not physically attracted to each other in some way, you know? And I was like, I told myself, hey, if the physical attraction isn't there, you're just going to have to work on it. You two are, you know, we're going to have to work it out. And I mean, thankfully it was there in spades in you know, to the nth degree. But yeah, no, love is definitely blind.
I don't think a lot of people would agree, man. I mean, you look at everybody in today's time, and I haven't found love yet, so I don't say this. I'm talking from friends of mine, right? But,
sure.
I mean, Cameron, dude, you had launched a business. This was shortly before, I'm assuming, right? Like probably right before you had gotten on the show. But why would you do something like that if you kind of knew you were going to launch a business and you'd went to school for a specific thing, and then you became a data scientist?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I was at a point. So right before the show, I was starting this new business, but at the same time, I was working for this corporation, building basically anti-money laundering systems for banks. That was like the primary thing. I was working on some other projects, leading a team of data scientists. I had a team of about 10 that I was leading. And, you know, I was where I thought I wanted to be in my career, but I wasn't fulfilled. You know, my dating life was unfulfilling as well. You know, I was using the apps. I wasn't connecting with anyone through that. And probably just the people I was picking, you know, I would see the pictures. I liked the pics, go out on a date. It wasn't connecting. So I was just at a point in my life where I really wanted an adventure. You know, I wanted to try something different.
That's what it was. It was totally different, dude. You met this woman behind a wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think the concept of the show was super interesting, but you bring up apps. That's what everybody's doing right now. And you know what's funny? I don't know if this is your social circle. A lot of people I'm talking to, dating is the topic of conversation because everybody's looking for love. Everybody's trying to settle down. People in the 30s, the 40s, the 20s. It doesn't really matter. I think people are often like, everybody's stuck in that. Do you think from your perspective, whether you're talking to people or what have you, like, are you constantly getting the same thoughts from your friends and colleagues that everybody's kind of stuck trying to find love?
Well, thankfully for my friends, I feel like most of them have found that person, or they're in a committed relationship or what have you. But in the broader scheme, the people that I talk to online, you know, people I've met through social media or whatever, yeah, that's definitely the case. That, you know, especially the sentiment in Atlanta, which is where Lauren and I reside, is that the dating pool here is just trash. And both men and women say that, which is interesting because, you know, clearly that can't be completely the case, but I think it's, you know, in part responsible, that the apps are kind of responsible for that in a way, you know, with just such shallow focus on social media and, you know, very picture oriented focus. And it's important to have physical attraction to people, obviously. I mean, I don't ever think that was the point of Love is Blind, was to say that physical attraction doesn't matter. It does. But I think what I took away was that it's really more important to focus on that connection through conversation, through shared values, talking to, you know, seeing the world in a similar way, in the sense of like how you want to raise a family or how you want to manage the household. All this stuff is way more fundamental and foundational than the looks.
Do you think you can get both at the same time? Because imagine everybody wants the physical characteristics first, right? But then it's like something that the show I think was trying to tell people. You don't have to look at that first, although it's important. You need to physically be attracted to somebody.
Yeah,
It shouldn't be the first thing, but then the apps are the opposite of that. But do you think from
right.
your perspective, you can get both at the same time?
Of course you can. Absolutely. Absolutely you can. And I think from a strategic point of view, it makes sense to not look at the looks first, to look at that compatibility that I just mentioned, because it's way you can filter out way more people that way. With looks, I mean, I guess it depends on the person, but I feel for looks, there's you can meet a whole bunch of people and just not be compatible with them in the right ways. But there's such a smaller number of people that you're going to match with in terms of like just shared values and your life and your lifestyle and all this.
I think it's a huge point. I have you positioned as like a love expert, by the way. I don't think you know what you signed up for, buddy. I'm kidding.
Hey,
It's like
I'll answer whatever.
I'm kidding, dude. It's not even Q&A. I think these podcasts have turned into such conversations. But dude,
Yeah.
tell us what you think your life has turned into now. Do you feel like being a somewhat of a celebrity getting off these shows? I'm always curious to find out from people who get off of like hot shot reality shows, for example,
Yeah.
something that everybody was buzzing about, and then overnight you're getting 1 million followers on Instagram. How's your life
Right.
changed from like who you were before the show?
Right. Well, I mean, you said that you saw me as like a dating expert. I'm definitely not an expert in the sense that, I mean, hey, what I do feel confident in that I bring to the table is that from my past dating relationships, um, I sat down right before the show and I like tried to analyze and think about what I could improve on and think about, what I needed in a partner, and also, focus on things like listening to what my partner has to say, not trying to talk over them, all these things. So I really put in the time there. And I feel like that gave me great insight. Um, but in terms of the how it is to be treated, this way, being a celebrity overnight, I mean, it's interesting because so many people have come to Lauren and I asking all these questions about dating and relationships and love. And, that's why we wrote the book. We put all those questions into the book because, questions about how did you know that she was the right one for you after 5, 6, 7 days of dating through a wall, and a lot of it was really just sitting down and thinking about what I needed to know, what were the sort of conversations we'd have to have. But there is also, a lot of pressure people put on me to, you know meet their expectations, and they see the show and they think about me uh, being the same as I was on back in 2018 when the show was filmed. But I've evolved over time. Everyone does, hopefully, right? So
Yeah, you're
yeah.
exactly right. You said pressure and you said listen. I always pick up keywords, right? That's just part of
Okay.
being on a
Okay.
podcast.
Yeah. No.
I want to
Please.
get to listening in a second. I don't think people fucking listen to anybody nowadays. They don't listen to thoughts, they don't listen to opinions, advice. So I want to talk about that with you. And then you also said pressure. There's a lot of pressure that comes with getting off that show and people coming to you guys. Luckily, you have a platform and a team and be like, hey, I'm gonna write a book now. Let's just put all those questions into a book and
Yeah.
sell it, make it profitable, right? Because time is money.
It is.
What do you mean by pressure? Did you guys feel at some point that you and Lauren were looking at each other like, holy shit, what did we sign up for? How do we respond to these people? Because the second you don't respond to someone who's like, hey, give me love advice. How did you fall in love with each other?
Yeah.
They're gonna like, throw something in your DMs that you don't want.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's the DMs thing is something out of this world. But yeah, no, you're right that the pressure comes in so many different forms. First and foremost, people want to see us have a baby. They're dying to see us have a baby. And we get pressured about having a baby every single day, hundreds of times a day. It's which is nice that people are really invested in us and want to see that. But we're really when we definitely want to have a baby, but we're on our own timeline. And I know other married couples get that pressure, but for us, it's magnified by the scale of our platform. The other pressure comes in forms like we put out a YouTube video last month, and at the end of the video, we kissed, and people analyzed the kiss. Why didn't Lauren come fully into the kiss and like really give him a good kiss? She seemed to be a little reserved. Like, is there something wrong with the relationship? So there's all this like analysis and people thinking that we have to conform to some idea of what they imagine our romance and our lives to be like. But that's it's not realistic, you know.
And I think too, knowing how to respond to that. And like you said, you're on your own timeline. I think everybody's on their own timeline. I think I
Yeah.
dropped my brother the last episode. Who was I talking to? Andy Grammer. And I was like, oh
Okay.
yeah, by the way, my brother's gonna have a kid soon. And it's true, right? They are having a kid. They're ready. He's also married to a Black woman. And I think the baby's gonna be
Okay.
very cute. I don't know why people are saying you guys have to have a kid. I'm almost certain it's because it's gonna be biracial and super cute. But on top
Right.
of that, people are just curious, right? I think people are driven by
Yes.
curiosity. And it's interesting to see because at the end of the day, like it's literally a dime in a dozen that you find people that are genuinely interested into someone who doesn't look anything like them or anyone in their family, right? And that's
Hmm.
another point I wanted to bring up today too. It's like I'm sure you guys have been asked by many magazines and TV shows and podcasts about your biracial relationship and how that kind of
Yeah.
impacts your celebrity to some extent, right? Coming from two very
Right.
different communities. How's that been for you guys?
Man, yeah. I mean, it's ultimately, I think it's a blessing. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway for me, because it's so nice to give people a sense that, look, this is totally possible. Because some people, it blows my mind, but at the same time, I can kind of understand that some people see interracial, biracial dating as something just wholly foreign and out of the realm of possibility, even though a lot of these people, and I say this because I've had people reach out to me many times and say, hey, I really want to date outside of my race, but I have all these reservations about it. Or I'm in this interracial relationship, but my family has reservations, or they're not accepting of it. So what do I do? So I'm happy about the fact that our platform lets people see, like, hey, you can have a happy relationship, healthy relationship where it's not perfect, but you're growing together just like any healthy, normal married couple. And it doesn't mean that you don't have important conversations. You can't there's nothing that you can sweep under the rug. You have to talk about, for example, the racial inequality that's happening in this country, that has been happening in this country, especially back in June 2020 at the very peak of BLM marches and everything. We had to have a lot of very hard, uncomfortable, but important conversations about, what does it mean to be Black in America, and you know, me learning from that, and as we talked about earlier, more importantly, listening and just kind of being a sounding board in a way too. Um, yeah, I mean,
That's his thoughts. And we'll keep going from there, dude. And it's true. I think when you listen to somebody, you're gonna find like a lot of what they actually feel, and what makes them tick. I used to say that all the time. I wanted to launch this long form podcast or long form conversation because it allows me to sit here and listen, right, to guys like you and understand how your brains work, understand what made you tick, what pissed you off, what turned a bad day into a good day. But when you listen to Lauren, for example, in a relationship, I can imagine, I'm sure your fans are tuning in now. Our people are probably listening like, holy shit, dude made, like found love on a fucking TV show, whatever. But like,
right,
how much of listening played into keeping a I guess an authentically strong relationship with Lauren? Because imagine you guys get off of a show like that. You didn't know where her intentions were, and she didn't know what yours were. It was literally to get on a TV show, right? Just like The Bachelor, Love Island, Too Hot to Handle, but this was different
right,
than those shows for the two of you.
right. Yeah, and I have to say, I can really appreciate that you have great listening skills, and it's very underrated. it seems like such a benign thing to do, to just sit there and listen, but it's really hard. It's really hard, especially if you love to talk.
Well, that's the
Um,
thing too, right? I think like I used to get people in trouble, bro. Like in school,
yeah.
and we'll talk about. I want to talk about you being a data scientist because numbers scare the shit out of me, and science
Okay.
pisses me off. So
Okay.
you, you mix the two together, I could learn something from a guy like you.
Hey, hey. All right.
But as you're right, it's people who like to talk, or as a generation, if you look at Gen Z or the millennials or shit, anybody today that just wants to be heard. I used to tell
Yeah.
people all the time, here I go talking over you, but like
No, no.
it's about everybody who wants to be heard, right? But you don't have to be heard all the time. And so like even as 25-year-old Justin, I'm trying to be like, yo, hold on, listen, right? You get all your answers by asking one question and listening, or just by opening your ears and allowing someone to be like, let out their feelings, let out their emotions, and you're going to find so much out. But again, back to you guys on how
Yeah.
listening helped.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, I love to talk to, so I mean, I really have to pull back the reins on it sometimes. And I think when you're able to listen to someone, what happens is you give them the opportunity to feel heard. And when people feel heard, and just kind of what you just said about people want to be heard, but they don't often feel heard. So when you give people that opportunity to feel heard, then they are much more willing to be vulnerable. And I think vulnerability is really the key to connection. If you're not willing to share um, things that are a little bit difficult to talk about sometimes, maybe things that you're insecure about, or things that difficulties you faced, because ultimately that's part of our human experience. And if we try to eschew that and not talk about it, then we're just kind of having like a small talk conversation, right?
I would call it surface level, but you're right. Small talk, surface level. I hate it. And it's
Yeah.
because I think once you've gotten past surface level or small talk with so many people in your life, and you and I realize that it takes you to a next level of connection and vulnerability, that is where the sweet spot is. But for you and Lauren, was it that way with the relationship? I could say that I don't date right now because I get that vulnerability and the connection with people in my life, like friends and family. One
Yeah.
day I'll go after, someone and get deep. But like for you guys in a relationship, how much of a drastic change was it where you guys were actually listening to each other? And did you feel like you're more emotionally in tune with each other after a little while?
Oh, of course. I mean, that was the only way that we were able to connect through the wall, was we were really both very much trying to listen and make the other person feel heard, participate in what they had to say. And I mean, I would even go into the dates with certain questions that I wanted to talk to her about. For example, like, if one of us was making more money than the other one, how do you think we should balance our finances as a household, and like also balance that with household responsibilities? Or I might ask about, like, I mean, we talked about things like infidelity or fidelity. Have you ever been cheated on or cheated in the past? I mean, obviously not very comfortable things to talk about, but what's something you've done in the past that you weren't proud of? Or what's something that you are proud of, one of your big accomplishments? So I mean, these kind of get the ball rolling to really revealing conversations.
And
And
you
that
said
was the
it
only way we
too.
could. Yeah.
Yeah, you said like uncomfortable conversations. You saw it with Emmanuel Akko. I'm trying to get him on the show.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Uncomfortable conversations with the black man, but uncomfortable conversations matter for like any demographic, any type of person, any human being, don't you
Yeah.
think? And like
I think so.
yeah, my mom used to raise me and be like, unless you like controversy, you're gonna have a hard time growing up because you have to, or if you can't handle controversy, you will have a very hard time growing up, don't you
Yeah.
think?
I do. I do. I mean, it's obviously it's always the case too. I mean, the things that help us progress often, they're tough in some way. They're tough to talk about, or It's the thing that we do, we're like dreading doing because we know it's going to take a lot of effort to do it. But it's probably the thing that we need to do to reach whatever next stage in our life, or build a stronger connection. Apologizing when we, we've actually done something wrong, and when we understand that we did something wrong, or admitting when we failed at something, being honest with ourselves about our own weaknesses. I mean, people are so afraid. I mean, and I hope I'm not coming across as like holier than thou, like I have this all figured out, because I certainly don't. But
I don't think anybody does, Cameron.
yeah, but that's, I mean, hey, I'm just sharing what my perspective, and I think that people get scared of sharing their weaknesses and failures and all this, but I think there's really some strength to come, because once you identify it, you can start to work on it. So
110,000%. Do you take yourself as an emotional person? I'm curious. I feel like when you were on the show, we saw a lot of emotions go in there.
yes, we did. We definitely did. I mean, I would say I'm an emotional person, and in the sense that I'm a very empathic person. Um, I feel I do have strong surges of emotion often. And especially, if I see someone going through something, I kind of, as a byproduct, will start to feel the same way. Um, and the show did show me at my most like emotional times. Of course, it didn't really show a lot of the fun times we had. We had a lot of flirtation and fun, and teasing each other, this type of thing. But
I don't think the producers wanted to show that, because then you'd have
no,
been like
no,
every other reality show. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's what's
Well,
special
or
about it.
just like it was like just normal couple stuff, having fun, flirting type of banter. They did a good job overall.
Hell yeah, they
Um,
did. You just launched a book because you became famous from the
yeah,
show, bro. I'd be happy to. I'm kidding, dude. Wait, you bring up a good thing, which is empathy. I don't think people have enough of it, and it's because they probably don't know how to handle it, or they don't want to seem weak, or maybe they just
there you
haven't
go.
had. I had a conversation with who was I talking to? Gosh, that's how we do this every week. Um, Talking about vulnerability with and admitting to your trauma. And
Mm,
I think the same person who doesn't admit to their trauma, or like things that they'd experienced in their life, or it's probably the same person that doesn't necessarily hold a lot of empathy for people, um, and not with their own fault, right? That's not always someone's fault that they can't be as empathetic to people, either because you haven't experienced the same thing, or because you just don't really give a shit. So I wanted to ask you that. I mean, from all the people that you've met in your life, including Lauren, and when you meet hard asses or people who don't necessarily have that much emotion to them,
yeah,
I've always argued that. I will always say that everybody's emotional. They just show it in different ways. Would you say the same?
absolutely, 100%. And of course, I mean, as you know, and this podcast is called Men of the Hour, so the stereotype for men, right, is that it's weak to show emotion, that
Mm,
you should never cry, you should never, I mean, the only really acceptable forms of emotion for men are like anger, right? That's kind of like, you're tough, you're showing anger, whatever. For me, I always felt like trying to conceal your emotion is an insecurity, because you're afraid of how other people will perceive your emotion. So if you are confident enough in yourself to show how you truly feel, then that's the strength. So that's how I perceive it to be. And I think
mm,
it's really a case where so many men and women too, but they feel like the right thing to do is to conceal their emotion and bear, hold it in, because that's the strong thing to do. They're controlling their emotions. But I feel like when you do that, you know, it's got to come out at some other way. It's just not healthy to do that. I mean, our emotional systems are there. They serve a functional purpose, right? They're a way that we communicate with other people. So ultimately, I think it's important to express our emotions. I mean, and within reason. I mean, so, but but to express our emotions and to communicate with people about our emotions.
And just because I feel like you don't express it to the extreme,
Yeah.
imagine everything has an extreme. You could be really
Yeah.
fucking sad or you can be really fucking mad.
Right.
And I think if you go level 0 to 10 back and forth, like that's also unhealthy. People aren't
Right.
willing to kind of sit at a good equilibrium at a 5 and say, you know what, I'm happy, but that just pissed me off, or I'm
Right.
really mad, Cameron.
Yeah.
But I have a soft spot today for my mom. She just made me cry by watching the whatever movie came out with Kevin Hart recently. I think it's
Oh,
called
I heard that
What
was sad.
I Isn't it sad? You know what's so crazy? Gosh, what was the name of it? And whoever can find it, anybody listening, if you find it, direct message or send something to Cameron and I later. But I heard the movie was where his wife dies, right? And
Oh.
and after she has a kid, because she has like she died from the pregnancy, or like from the
Oh
or,
no.
right, like a miscarriage for herself. Like, it's very sad. Crazy enough, I sent it to my brother and I kind of retracted it. I wish you can send back a text, because I was like, bro, you should watch this, you're about to have a kid soon. And then I read the
Oh
description. I just heard it was
no.
sad but like loving and da da da, and I was like, oh shit, I sent my brother's, like, so
Oh
maybe a
man.
little taboo. Cameron, dude, I could talk to you all fucking day about this stuff, but I want to talk about leap of faith for a second.
Yes, yes,
Because
yes.
as much as it means to, I hope you guys actually sent me a hard copy, not more like a paperback. No, I'm
Oh,
kidding.
all hard copies. All hard copies.
So as much as it relates to a relationship, it also relates to people personally, to take a leap of faith. So number one, when you guys wrote it, trying to help people with their relationships, what was the main goal? Like, what do you want people to get out of this book? And then number
Yeah.
two, when you wrote it from a personal stance, did you learn anything about yourself?
Good questions. Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I want people to take away from the book is that, you know, ultimately, I think it's really important to take leaps of faith in your life, in your love life, but also just in your life in general. And yeah, there's always going to be some risks involved. And I would never, I'm not advocating gambling. I'm advocating like taking calculated risks. I mean, thinking about this show, I mean, of course, there's no way for me to know what was going to happen from it, but I went into it, you know, preparing myself mentally, thinking about, who I wanted, what I wanted in a future partner, what I needed to improve on in myself. So I went into it with like a level of preparation. So I'm not encouraging people to take like just a wild leap without any sort of like preparation or whatever. But if you, for example, want to start a new business and you've done all this planning and you're ready to pull the trigger, there's going to be people in your life where, like, most startup businesses fail. You've got a good 9 to 5 career. You don't want to chance that. You maybe just keep this as a hobby, don't pursue it full time. But I would encourage you, if you've done your research, you've done your planning, I mean, and this is what you're passionate about, you should take that leap of faith. That's one of the takeaways, really. And on the love side of things, I wanted to put some pragmatic ways in here of like having conversations with your partner, ways of getting to know them better, focusing on listening, like we talked about. And yeah, that's really the big point of the book from my perspective. And in the process of writing the book, what I learned, I mean, is well, for one, I learned that, something like writing a book, which seems totally like an insurmountable task, is very possible. And it's possible, sometimes like those things you can do, you can chip away at it, a day at a time, and setting goals that you can actually hit. I mean, I found that it was possible. So writing one book, I feel like, hey, it's time for number two.
I love it. Your energy is everything, dude. Because I kind of thought that. I was like, well, he's writing this book with Lauren. I'm assuming there's a lot of work that went into it, but how accomplishing is that? And everybody nowadays,
Yeah.
like, oh, New York Times bestselling author, Amazon bestselling author, welcome to Barnes and Noble. I'm going to sign your book. Like, it seems like everybody's launching a fucking book. You know what I mean? But not many
Yeah.
couples launched a book. There are a lot of them are independent. So, like, to be able to
Yeah.
co-write something with someone from a shared
Yeah.
experience is a different kind of, author.
It is. It is. And it was a blessing too, because I mean, we got to sit down as husband and wife and write this, which is, like you said, it's not very common.
It's a great gift to
And
your kid when that comes.
right, right. I'm like, hey, this is what led to you ultimately.
Oh, that's
Um
great.
yeah, it was, No, it was a beautiful thing. I mean, it was, of course, challenging at times when it's like, hey, we really got to finish these 3, 4 chapters by next couple weeks. And, it's like, man, we've already been working at this for 6, 7 months, like really getting kind of burnt out here. But that's, I mean, hey, that's the reality of it. So it all, obviously it pays off in the end while you're
Mm.
going through it. You're like, man, this really is just a lot to slog through, but just got to keep pushing. Yeah.
Yeah. You said earlier, I will always refer back to what you say, by the way. That's just my way of
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
doing this thing. But you said like when you're going about doing these things, you can't just like take a leap of faith and have no plan.
Yes.
Who in their right mind jumps off a bridge without a plan? Okay, don't get me wrong,
Right.
there's like crazy people out there, but like even if you're planning to jump out of a plane, you want to have your pack with the thing
Right.
and you want to be with someone who's done it before. If you
Right.
want to launch a business, you want to be asking a lot of entrepreneurs a lot of fucking questions about what that process was like, right? Doing your research, do your due diligence, put money in your bank account to save for like mishaps when the business is launched.
Right.
And the reason I love that you said that is because as you're writing this book, I'm almost assuming that simultaneously you're thinking, simultaneously, whatever, you're thinking about the business you had launched, right? Like as someone who had studied. What did you study, by the way? So you're a data scientist, right? And
Yeah. So yeah, I've had a kind of a strange trajectory in some sense, but it makes sense to me. So I was pre med in undergrad,
mm,
and then I got a master's in neuroscience, and then I got at UG. I went to UG after and got a master's in artificial intelligence.
the
So
whole AI deal, dude.
yes, yes. So my work is in AI, and I mean it's funny that I think this is all coming full circle because what I'm developing right now is a software for investing, and the whole goal of the software is to give the retail investor, the everyday investor, the power to try to understand the business behind the stocks, because people see the ticker symbols and they just see stocks going up or down, or they see the
That's all
crypto
they
going
care
up or
about.
down,
Yep. It's a
and they're like,
gamble.
oh man, yeah, it's a gamble. And I'm saying, look, this is a great way to make money, but we really have to look at the business. We have to understand, do they have positive cash flow and earnings? Do they have a mountain of debt compared to their equity? Are the insiders of the company buying or selling their shares? So the software uses AI to analyze financial statements and to condense that information down into a readable, layman's terms way of understanding the company, so that hopefully to empower people to make more informed decisions. So they can still take that leap of faith and invest, but they have a little bit more understanding of the business, and it's not just a YOLO into the latest meme stock.
I take you as such a smarter dude. I knew that you were smart. You're even smarter because you're driving this shit with purpose. And I think that's so important to note. Like Alliance AI, for example, if you think about it,
Yes.
I don't do a lot of like money investing. My friends who are in finance, like people who work in fintech, like I know these people, but I've never cared to study it.
Right.
You just then sold me on potentially getting this app and like figuring it out because I could teach myself,
Yeah.
right, through the
That's
app
that's the
while
whole point.
using it.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting, dude. Well, good luck when it comes
Thank
out.
you
You
so
you tell me
much.
when you need press releases and interviews and stuff. That's so
Hey,
cool.
I will hold you to that. Yeah, I'm excited about it, man, because I mean, you've seen it. You've seen people buying the latest crypto coin, or just AMC, GameStop, whatever the meme stock is, and not knowing about the underlying business, and is this a good investment based on how much money they're making and their sales and all this stuff, which it's not that hard when you get a sense for what it is, and it's really just a matter of kind of tossing out the stuff that doesn't matter, the chaff, and just looking at what does matter and then making a judgment based on that.
Yeah. Why do you think people wouldn't go and like plan before doing something extravagant? They want to launch an app, they want to launch a book, or sorry, write a book. They want to switch jobs after 20
Yeah.
years. Why do you think people are so hesitant maybe to, because I think that's a reason people don't take leaps of faith or jump towards anything. It's because they're
Right.
scared, right? Of maybe lack of preparation.
Yeah, it is an interesting case, and the more knowledge that you have, I mean, the less scary it can be. and you can never have perfect knowledge, obviously. Um, yeah, but it's a grind to get that sometimes. It's tedious, can be boring, and I think that's a reason why people don't prepare. They're just like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want that to come off as cynical towards
No,
people.
but I wanted to bounce off of that really quickly, Cameron. Here's a
Yeah,
secret life hack, and I know you've done this too, because you wouldn't have wrote a book otherwise. Here's a life hack. If you're somebody, including you and I, who wants to like do anything, right? You want
yeah,
to you want to write a book, you got to go call someone who wrote a book. You have to go call someone who does publishing, and
yeah,
you need to contact people and figure out what it's going to take, how long it's going to take, who needs to be on your team. Do you need a co-writer? I would need a ghostwriter. I'm not that great at writing. But if I wanted to write a book, shit, maybe I can throw my quotes, and you know what I might
yeah,
do is write a book called The Men of the Hour. No, I'm kidding. We'll figure it out.
yeah.
But
You
your quotes
should.
would live in that. You know what I mean? Or I would
Yeah,
call you. I'd say, hey Cam, hey, you remember that book you wrote with Lauren?
right.
What was that process like? That takes 30 minutes to find out what you did. But don't you
Right.
think that's like the easiest thing to do? Like that's
Yes.
how you do anything. You have to call people
Yeah.
that are good at or experts in that field.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely have to stand on the shoulders of giants and see what they did. And that'll save you a lot of effort too, you know. And even going on Love is Blind, I watched these dating shows because I really had never watched them before. So I wanted to get a sense of like what was the whole flow of this sort of thing, what were the people like and all this. Because and after watching, I'm like, man, I really don't feel like I'm like these other guys on the show. But at least I had a sense of like where I fit in and just the general flow of everything. So yeah, you gotta do your homework.
Homework. That's going to be the title of your episode. I usually think about what the title of the episode is as we're
Okay.
talking. Do your homework. Do your homework, write a
Your
book, and
homework.
launch a AI app.
Bam. Simple as that.
Did you enjoy your time? Are you enjoying your time in Georgia? It's hot down there. I
Absolutely.
hate the
It's
South
hot.
for the
Yeah,
weather.
we're in our studio right now and I turned the AC off for this interview. So yeah, it's boiling.
Bro, I'm so sorry. Go turn the AC on if you need to.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, it's hot in Georgia. Do you think you guys will stay in the South? I mean, that's often a question for couples. My brother settled in Nashville, and I'm always like, well,
Okay.
Nashville's a good family place. So is Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah. We love it, man. I mean, we just got a new house. So we're excited about that. So I really love it. You know, I'm from the state of Maine originally. So it is obviously a change from that. And it's tough being away from family and all that. But yeah, Georgia's a beautiful place. A lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Then you got the peaches or something, right? And then the peaches state.
The peaches, you know, it's funny because you really only get them during the summertime. They don't, you know, in the
Really?
wintertime. Yeah, the grocery store is bringing them in from Mexico. I'm like,
Oh,
man, it's kind of a letdown. It's a seasonal thing, I guess, in Georgia. I don't know.
speaking of Georgia, you bulldog. I bet everybody, when I got on the Zoom call with Cameron, I was like, oh my God, you're a fucking bulldog. I was at Tennessee. The SEC
Okay,
has a
okay.
specific culture to it, the
Yes, it
Southeast.
does.
And I know a
Yes.
lot of your friends and family are probably like definitely up north where they were in
Right.
Maine. But when you settle in Georgia, there's a different type of person there too that I think you end up getting adapted to. And it's a lovable kind of Southern love, right? Especially in good old Atlanta.
Uh,
I had some friends
yeah,
leave Georgia and go to LA. It's very different, I think, in the
yeah,
South. And the reason I bring it up is because, like, so when you went through school that many times,
yeah,
and these were separate degrees. These weren't
yeah.
necessarily something that, but a lot of people are thinking about going back to school now. And you went and got two masters, two.
Two masters. Yeah, yeah.
Holy shit! So like as you're going through school, I imagine young adults now, our main audience is 18 to 34 year olds, people who probably are
Okay.
considering going to get a master's or,
Yeah.
to be honest, I don't fucking know. People in their 50s are getting doctorates now, so whatever.
Oh yeah,
But as you're
definitely.
like and you said this earlier, which is like level of concentration. Sometimes it's boring to learn. I imagine because you got two masters, it's been really easy to kind of like focus and drill into something you need to like study or learn to then
Yeah,
launch an app or book and stuff too.
it
But for
is.
people
Yeah.
with the lack of concentration, I mean, what do you have any tips on like focusing and staying and focused in
Man,
school?
that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, hey, when I went to college, I had such a rude awakening because, you know, in high school I thought I this was all easy stuff and then just got blasted by my first chemistry exam And I realized like, man, like I really have to figure out how to prepare for this stuff. In terms of doing that, um, well, a couple of things. One is that what's worked for me in learning whatever this stuff is like having a goal in mind for what you want to do with what you're trying to learn. And by that I don't just mean like I want to become a doctor or I want to become a lawyer or whatever. More like a more concrete, shorter term goal. Like for me, I taught myself how to program. So what I wanted to create, I had a specific program in mind that I wanted to write. So that motivated me to learn how to program because I tried to make it, wasn't working. I would go online, read about it. Versus like if you open up a programming textbook, I mean, you'll be asleep in like 10 minutes. It's the exercises are usually boring and it's just like really abstract. And same thing for statistics. I did terrible in college in statistics. And then I was like, I'm not even going to ever need this anyways. And then when I went into AI, I'm like, oh shit, this is the basis of literally everything in the field. So but and then I started to care about statistics and probability because I was like, wow, I can see how this can be applied. I can use these tools to predict, concussion prognosis from these data points or predict if this wire looks fraudulent or not from this bank. So for me, I'm very, I guess, practical application focused, and that motivates me to learn because I have an objective for that.
And that's the thing I kind of figured you would have said too, dude. Because it's like when you can apply something and you're
Yeah.
somewhat interested, it tends to be a little bit more different of a learning process.
Oh yeah. If it's just abstract, I mean, I have a hard time learning it really. Uh, you know, Same thing for linear, like I did linear algebra. I did not great in that either in college. And it wasn't until I'm like, oh, matrices, like that's literally the way that we represent all data. And so it's, yeah, that's how you have to be passionate about it. And even if it's, something like statistics, which is dry, you have to see how it applies to your passions and kind of mentally weave it in there somehow, you
Yeah,
know.
dude, that's exactly right. Our time is just about up, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like I like I said, we could talk about a lot of different things, but
sure.
we essentially have an hour. I want you to get out of the studio. You're about to fucking start sweating, and I don't want to be the cause of your heat stroke. But thanks for taking at least this much time, dude. I think
Yeah,
there is something special about having these long form conversations. It's because like you get real and authentic. I got one more idea I want to toss to you, and that's this
sure.
big picture of kind of learning to settle down. People aren't ready for that a lot of times. I've met people in their 50s and 60s who are still single, met people in their
Yeah,
20s who settled at 21, so
yeah,
everybody's timeline, and you said this timeline, or at least relative to your kid, your timeline is your timeline. So I
yeah.
wanted to stress the importance of that as we close, because sometimes I feel like I'm sitting at the altar, like as we're about to close this. I'm kidding, but there's you have to like focus on you and what you want to in order to even think that you're going to like settle at any point, because people are chasing these like materialistic things about a relationship, or they're chasing the fame of a reality show or the fame of writing a book. You haven't done those, and I can tell by the way that you're talking and how you express your emotional intelligence that that's not the kind of person you are. So how did you get to that point in your life? Because if you think about it, a lot of people are getting lost and trying to look for a relationship or a new job or
Yeah,
write a book. And it's all because it's this fluffy shit's hanging out over their head. Like, this is why you should do it, right? Social media is like, I want more Instagram followers. I'm going to go on a reality show, right? Or I want to be a New York Times
Lord.
bestselling author so I can be verified on Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Why aren't you like that? Especially after coming off that show.
Yeah, well, gosh, that I mean, the worst thing you could do from going on a reality show is then start thinking that, you know, just like puffing yourself up because of it, I think. Um, but in terms of settling down, what allowed me to do that was, I dated in the past. I mean, I wasn't out here every night, all night type of guy, but I mean, I had my fair share of dating. And when I met Lauren, I realized that, while we're not perfect, she's not perfect. And, that we would, you know, that I wasn't going to find someone who was going to be more right for me, and of course, there's always this grass is greener on the other side perspective that we all kind of have. And it's kind of I don't know if it's unfortunate or not, but that seems to be a thing where, we have something and now we're wishing we had something else. And we're focused on, fact that, you and your partner disagree about where you want to go to dinner all the time or something like that, whatever it is, instead of focusing on like what you have and the blessing that is. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I knew that we weren't perfect, but we were as perfect as I felt like anyone could really be together. And I mean, that's it. To get to that point, though, I think people have to reflect on what they really want truly in a partner. And it helped me to write that down. And when you do that, then that also gives you kind of a bar where you need to reach yourself and be like, well, if I want my partner to be caring or like thoughtful, then I need to be thoughtful too. I need to be thinking about, the small stuff of like, bringing them a cup of tea in the morning or whatever it is. But, that examples like that, like if you're looking for these high positive qualities in a partner, you need to possess them as well. You need to think about what you want in a partner. This is what worked for me.
And that'll ground you. I think there's two ways to look at it. There's like, I want a relationship and I want to settle down. Great, go down this road, right? Seems like Cameron is down that road. So you can listen to everything he just said, or you can be like me. And if you don't want to date, you can stay single forever. But it's the same way. You kind of have to realize, like, am I willing to give all those great attributes
Right.
and things to someone yet? My answer is no. And like, there's totally two ways to look at it, right? You got a single motherfucker like me, and you got a great, almost like, you're about to have a kid, maybe, who knows? Like, like you guys are
Someday
very
I hope.
happy. Who know? I'm not putting
Yeah.
the pressure on you, bro. Your people in your
Yeah.
DMs are doing enough of that,
Yes, they are.
Cameron, dude, before you start sweating up in the studio of yours, thank you. You've brought up a lot of great points that I wasn't expecting. And that is to listen, to be laser focused on what you want, to write a fucking book with someone that you care about. Leap of faith, everybody, please
Leap
go
of
grab
faith.
it. We'll put a link in this podcast
Yes.
description, and if you see anything on Instagram or YouTube, we'll also put it in there too. I want you guys to go buy
Sure.
it. Give my man some money. No, I'm kidding. Dude, and then like you're here. You're so fucking smart, and I admire the shit out of that.
Thank you
So for bringing that to the podcast in the last hour, I appreciate it, buddy. Guys, if you're listening,
Thank you.
Yeah, this is Cameron Hamilton. Cameron, your middle name is in your Instagram. It's Cameron
Reid, REID.
Hamilton, right?
Yes.
You and Lauren are all over the place. You guys can find them on Instagram. If you're listening to the podcast, I want to thank you for being here. If you're watching us, hello, good to see you. And Cameron, dude, thanks so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and you're such a great listener and question asker, conversationalist. So I really appreciate all of that.
Oh man,
yeah, it's been a blast.
You're the best, dude. I'm gonna keep that on the podcast, and we're gonna like archive it for later, right?
Yeah. Hey, if you need
so thanks for saying
pepper that right in.
Cameron, thanks, buddy.
Thank you so much.